Hey there, welcome to the Astro Psyche. My name is Shauna McGrath. I am an astrologer, and I wanted to jump on here and chat with you about Mercury Retrograde. We're currently in Mercury Retrograde, and when I asked what some questions that you have are regarding Mercury Retrograde and what to expect about that, some of the feedback that I got was a lot of people have heard Mercury retrograde being portrayed as like a negative, chaotic, where like everything goes wrong kind of time period. And I think that can happen, yes. And I wanted to sort of step back and see if we can look at Mercury retrograde as a different kind of energy that we can be friends with. And I think that there's a tendency in astrology and in a lot of fields to sensationalize things. And I think that Mercury retrograde is one period, one thing that gets sensationalized and sort of demonized in a way as well. I think that as astrologers, we also do this with things like Scorpio, the 8th house, the 12th house, Saturn. I think that we can kind of like get into a habit, and we all do this, myself included. We can get into a habit of making something only one thing. And I think that Mercury retrograde has really taken the brunt of that, in that it's a time where technological things go wrong, there's miscommunications, and I think that this is only looking at one piece of Mercury and Mercury retrograde, and that we can remember that Mercury is also a symbol of the trickster. It's a symbol of our intuition and our introspection and our ability to communicate in a symbolic way, and that we can actually gain a lot of benefit from connecting with this part of Mercury. So, for example, so I wanted to share some sort of like what has happened to me in this period. So one thing that I thought was sort of hilarious is that I've recently graduated from my MA in counseling program, and I've completed all of my coursework at the end of March. Everything's done, and a part of becoming licensed as an associate marriage and family therapist is that I need to have my degree posted, and once that's done, I need to mail in some paperwork to the state and have them process it. So I thought it was hilarious that the day that my degree was supposed to post online is when Mercury stationed retrograde. And I was like, oh, that's going to be, wonder what's going to happen there. And so, of course, there was a delay of about a week or so in my degree posting. And that's like a classic Mercury retrograde thing, right? That things take longer, or there's like a miscommunication, or like things don't go exactly the way that we think that they do. And this is why during Mercury retrograde, it's good to be prepared for delays, to know that things might kind of either go wonky or not go exactly as we expect. Now, what was actually good about that delay is that it gave me the time to really go through all of the paperwork that I needed to submit once my degree posted. And I actually realized like, oh, I need, this. And I didn't have this all lined up. And so while it was a delay, there was things that I needed to go through in order to get that done. And the other piece of this too that I wanted to mention is, so I need to mail my application, right? It's an important document. It's what will allow me to receive my license to practice therapy as an associate. And so like it's something that ideally, if I could wait, I would have wanted to wait until after Mercury stations direct. But that's May 14th. That's quite some time, and time is of the essence with this paperwork. So, we can't stop our life. We can't stop our lives when there's planetary energy happening. And the way that I was conceptualizing this is that this is an extension of completing this process. So me mailing in my application is an extension of the entire process of going to school and graduating to become a therapist. So it's like this paperwork is not initiating a new thing. Rather, it's finally completing a part of the process that I've sort of been waiting on for a little bit. And so it'll be really interesting to see how long it takes things to process. And my point there in sharing that with you is that, yes, things took a little bit longer, and, we make the most of it, we make the best out of it, and then we do what we need to do at the appropriate time. And I think there's also like divine timing in when things actually come through and when things actually happen. So what was really interesting too is that shortly after my degree posted, I also was able to speak with some colleagues about the process of getting set up in my office and all of the logistical things. And I actually gained more information and was finally able to speak to some supervisors and some folks regarding like legal issues as far as getting things set up. And I got the information that I needed that I didn't have before. And so I thought that was very Mercury retrograde as well, where new things came to light around something where I was like, okay, yeah, I need to research some of the logistical stuff, but I'll do that later. And even before Mercury was retrograde, I sort of had in my mind that I'm like, okay, I need to do some research on these particular topics, these particular business policies and practices. But it didn't feel like the right time. And I didn't really have a logical explanation for that. But I had this sense that that once my degree posted and I sent in my paperwork, that I would have the inspiration to do that research. And that's exactly what happened. I spontaneously was like, oh, I need to call this person. I need to call that person. And through that, through those conversations, I actually received all of the information that I needed, and things became very clear. So I thought it was really interesting that we typically think about Mercury retrograde as things getting mixed up and miscommunications. But I actually feel like I have more of a sense of clarity around some topics. And I know that sounds sort of ironic. But I think that it can kind of be like during a Mercury retrograde process, the things that we've been neglecting or sort of like on the back burner, like we're like, okay, I don't need to deal with that right now. I can figure that out later. It's not priority. During the retrograde, that's an opportunity for us to bring those things into the forefront, onto the front burners, so to speak. And I think that our challenges are when we make that change, when we bring something that's kind of been simmering in a pot in the background on the back burner and we bring it to the front burner. Maybe the front burner is really hot and it boils over. And so I think that that can happen when we're making these changes and it feels like things are moving too quickly. And so my point in sharing that is that it's like, it doesn't have to be miscommunication that happens. It doesn't have to be technical snafus, though, like, of course, those happen. For example, the security alarm for the house, like, has been like on the fritz and like going off, and we figured out the battery needs to be replaced. So like that's good though, right? Because now, that's something that has probably been like the battery needed to be replaced, and now we've become aware of it. So I think that's kind of a better way to think about it. It's like there's always things that we're pushing off to the side because we have finite time, attention, energy, awareness. There's only so much that we can take care of at any one time. And through Mercury retrograde, we get to go back through and sort of clean up and give loving attention and care to these things, these projects, these areas, these topics that we haven't had the time or the priority to work with and to process. And so I thought that was kind of like a nice way of looking at it. And I think that we can also think about Mercury retrograde as being like, we can think about it in a more lighthearted way, like this trickster kind of unexpected energy. And I think that is especially so during this Mercury retrograde process, where we have Mercury retrograde in Taurus very much near Uranus. And Uranus is about the unexpected, the surprises, and things clicking into place or being disrupted very rapidly. And so I think a big part of this too is allowing a space of non-judgment for Mercury and non-judgment for ourselves. I think that it can be really easy to like blame things on Mercury, or to be like, oh, it sucks. And I'm also just thinking about friends who have shared with me that things are just recently starting to open up for them and to flow and to go well. And I think that when we allow ourselves to expect good things from Mercury, that Mercury can also allow for that to happen. But again, it's going to come in this kind of like trickstery kind of, or this kind of like this sort of playful kind of way. And so I think that it can help us to realize that Mercury retrograde is not just this little, these inconveniences, that there's more to the symbolism, that Mercury is also about our intuition and our, because Mercury rules dreams, intuition, divination, and these are all ways that we communicate with spirit, with psyche, with soul, and that we tap into the other world, that we communicate not through linear thought or words, but that we communicate through symbolism, through patterns and pattern recognition. And I think that's a big part of Mercury retrograde too, is looking back on the patterns that are happening in our lives. And I don't know about you, but I find that my intuition is strengthened every time I look back and I'm like, oh, I had this gut feeling about this particular thing. And, our intuition is so subtle, and we're only able to strengthen our intuition through verifying a feeling and then looking back and being like, oh, that feeling was on or off, or I had this sense about this kind of thing. And so I think that Mercury retrograde also allows us to look back on the patterns and the scenarios, and that doing that requires us to slow down. It requires us to have the capacity for space, sometimes for silence. And I know, we don't always have the privilege of having that space and time. And sometimes it takes more energy and effort to create that and to carve that out. And so I think that's a part of it too, is that culturally we don't really emphasize reflection. And so in that way, it almost requires more effort for us to tune into the natural, introspective, and reflective parts of Mercury retrograde. And so, so I wonder how that lands with you. And I think an extra part of this is also that this Mercury retrograde is happening during the eclipse season, and each retrograde process is going to be a little bit different for Mercury, depending on a little bit different for us and how it manifests in our life, depending on how it's connecting in with different planets, how it's connecting in with us in our birth charts. So would love to hear how your current Mercury retrograde period has been, how this lands with you, and anything else that comes up for you around this. I will talk to you soon. I am wishing you a lovely day, and I'll see you later. Bye.